Hi, I'm Amy Parsons, president of Colorado State University and host of the Next 150 podcast. We have so many remarkable people in our community, and this is where we're going to hear their stories. We're going to get their perspectives on CSU's next 150 years and gather their very best advice for today's CSU students. Let's get started, Rams. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of CSU's Next 150. I'm here with my friend, Chuck Morris, obviously legendary music producer, leader in the music industry in Colorado for 50 years?
50 plus years.
Something like that.
Started my first club in Boulder in 1970.
1970?
Two Loggies.
And
And started booking the first dates of the Eagles and ZZ Top and Linda Ronstadt and all sorts of people.
We're going to come back to some of the acts that you booked at CSU at one point in history, if you can remember. I think I know. We'll get back there. But now you're with us at CSU, at Colorado State University. We're so happy to have you here.
And I'm so happy doing what I'm doing.
So let's start with today, because last week you called me on the phone and you had just won a major award.
Yes.
So first, congratulations.
Thank you. AIBA is a big organization of people in the music industry, and I was absolutely blown away that they named me Educator of the Year, which
Educator
is
of the
funny
Year,
because I've spent 50 years as a rock promoter and manager, but I started this program here at CSU. This is our middle of a fourth year.
Yeah.
And I was blown away. I will say that I won a lot of awards, Grammys, and one of my clubs is Billboard Club of the Year twice, Ebbets Field, but this is more special than anything I've ever won. I'm not taking light of, I was blown away by all the other stuff, but my dad was a school teacher in Brooklyn and then a principal, and I always vowed that when I did everything I wanted in the music business, I'd start a music business program at a major university. And looked at a couple of schools, and Amy was, I can say, was part of the main reason I decided to come up here. And I'm having the time of my life. I wish my dad was still alive because he'd be blown away.
So tell me why that was always a goal of yours at this stage in your life, to be involved with giving back and training the next generation of music industry leaders.
Well, for years, I've been speaking at different universities on one-offs, and I loved it. And I vowed that when I did everything I wanted in the music industry, and honestly made enough money that I can afford to live on a professor's salary,
Yeah.
I wanted to do this. In fact, I looked at some old story that was like 35 years ago, and they said, someday I'm going to start a music business program. So I've been thinking about this for years. And I loved what my dad did. I grew up with teachers and principals in New York, in Brooklyn, and Queens, and always had a great respect for teachers. And I always wanted to do this as a second career.
Well, we're really fortunate that you've decided to do it at CSU,
Well,
even though your roots are in Boulder, even though you started out on the hill at Two Loggies.
Yep.
Love that you've ended up here at CSU.
Can I tell that story?
You can tell the story, sure.
Well, I had an offer from Leeds to do it there. And Leeds is probably the best undergraduate school at CU, and I went to graduate school at CU until I dropped out to try to make it in the music business, started my first club, Two Loggies in Boulder. And it was never, I'm at a point in my life where it's not about money, so money had nothing to do with anything. And they made me an offer, but Leeds has a rule that if you start a program there, only Leeds kids could take the classes. And to me, it sort of missed my point. I want music majors who can take it. I want liberal arts, people who love music to learn about the music business. People may want to become an entertainment lawyer, like my co-director, who's still an entertainment lawyer.
Yeah.
And then at the last minute, Amy Parsons heard about me doing this and called me and said, can we make a little proposal at CSU? I said, I'm pretty certain I'm going to go to Leeds. Tell me if my memory's totally right.
I think that's about right.
And she said, well, let us give you a little proposal and come up to Fort Collins. And I came up, you must have had 12 or 15 people in there. President of the school, the head of the business school.
Yeah, we had Dean Beth Walker in there.
Everybody, and I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away and decided to do it here. And, Leeds is a great school, and it would have been fine there. But I'm really happy that I picked CSU.
Well, we're really happy too. Sounds like I snatched victory from the jaws of defeat there.
Yeah,
almost.
Well, it made sense. It really made sense.
Yeah. Well, I think, CSU, we love live music here.
Yeah.
A lot of places do. I think Fort Collins is such a great city for live music. It's really
It is.
part of the culture here, part of what students love here, part of what our community really loves about it. So talk a little bit about the program today. What are the students learning in the program? What do you hope they learn as part of
Well, we started off with one class the first year with, I think, 35 kids. And now we have 4 different classes with 375 kids, something like that, students.
That's awesome, yeah.
And I've been blessed that a lot of my friends have guest lectured. The students have been blown away. I've had Grizz, EDM act. I've had Illenium,
Yeah.
who sold out Mile High Stadium. I've had Big Ed Todd come up. I've had Michael Fronte. I've had Joe, my buddy, close friend, Joe Walsh has come from the Eagles. He's done it twice.
Yeah, Josh Blue, right?
Yes, a couple weeks ago.
People love that, yeah.
He was
Big
great.
Talent.
And he blew me away. Yeah. I mean, I've known him. Not that close, but I've known him. And, you know, what he's gone through with cerebral palsy and has had this great career is mind-blowing, what he's done. When I think of the obstacles I overcome and then I hang out with Josh Blue, nothing compared to what he's done and made a career out of it.
Yeah. What are you hoping, Chuck, that the CSU students are learning in these classes, taking away from these classes for their future in the industry?
Good question. I think they're learning that everybody wants to be in music, but it's still a job. And it's really hard. Not hard, but it's 24 hours a day. And I hope they're learning that if they want to go into music, they're learning enough to realize they better really want it or it's not going to work. Because when you start in the music business, I don't care who you are. I mean, I started managing the sink on the hill, cleaning the floors and managing it, which was a break for me. And then I started booking local bands in the back room. Some became famous, like Flash Cadillac and Tommy Bolin, and my career took off. But I ran a little 3-2 bar, and starting off, I always tell students, get in the front door. And I'm hoping that the program can teach students. Maybe the number one thing is they'll learn enough about the music business about maybe not they don't want to do it because it ain't easy.
Yeah. How do you think it's different for these students who are graduating today from CSU going into the music industry
than it was years ago?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. The music industry, and I've been doing it since 70. Actually, I booked bands and the Sink, my first job after school. The music business now is, thank God, it's totally different. I mean, and I'm not saying this in a bad way. There's a lot more lawyers, a lot more HR people. It's a real big business now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Most of those things have been better for our business. I mean, think about it. The big promoting companies, my company, AEG, which is owned by a fairly conservative, wonderful billionaire, Phil Anschutz, who I love to death. Live Nation's publicly traded. You can't do the things you used to do in a publicly traded company.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think it's all for the good, and I've watched it change, and I was able to change with the times. The people that couldn't change, the old-time people like me, they're either dead or out of the business now. They couldn't keep going.
Yeah. Well, you know what I see about the students who are taking your class now, learning all these lessons, learning the history, learning directly from people like you and people in the industry, from the artists. They're seeing it from all sides, right? And they're also working in it now, too, booking small acts on campus. So we see the students booking the acts, working with the artists, all of those types of things. That's amazing experience. I don't know that there's another program like it.
Yeah, probably not. And, you know, we've had students now that have gotten jobs at my old place, AEG, and one of them is working at William Morris in Nashville, and, you know, because they meet a lot of people. And I can honestly say, in all the years I hired 1 million people, I never looked, I shouldn't say this, my mother, may she rest in peace, would kill me. I never looked at a grade point average, but I did look at students if they interned in music stuff.
Yeah.
Early.
It's really the most important thing.
It really
get that
is.
real world experience.
It really is. As I always tell students, get a job part-time while you're a student. Anything in music, the radio station in town, a record store in town, working for Bohemian, which does a lot of stuff, or whatever, you know, and just get your foot in the door.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities like that around here at CSU, and it's a win for everybody because they're bringing in local artists to play at CSU, so the students, the general student population gets the benefit of it as well, because we're getting better acts in town, right? We're getting this great live music, and the students get to produce it.
Well, you know, we were involved in getting Goose to come up here, which did 13,000 people, and that got started.
At least 13,000.
Yeah, there were a lot of people there.
A lot of people here.
Well, that got started because I ran AEG for the Rocky Mountain and Northwest regions, And when I stepped down to come up here, my predecessor, who I had hired years ago, a guy named Don Strasberg and Brent Patrizzi, who are the co-presidents now. Don, now we've done Goose in Denver. They do sell out 2 Red Rocks. And Don was meeting with the band. And they said, their audience is a little bit older, in their 30s. And they said, well, we want to play in front of a younger audience, maybe a school. And Don said to the band, Chuck, of course, he's running this program. Why don't you come play CSU? And that's how the whole thing started.
Yeah, we want a lot more of that. That was an amazing night, actually.
It really
People
was.
Absolutely loved it. Gorgeous night. Big outdoor festival feel right in the middle of campus.
I think 13-3 or something. It was cheap tickets for students.
Yeah.
And the band actually played for they played for free.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to pay production, they had a lot of expenses, but they played for no fee. They really just wanted to do it.
Students had a great night. We had a lot of alumni come back who loved seeing it, and we haven't had a lot of big shows on campus like that, especially since COVID. So you know how much I love bringing those shows in, and with your help in this program, I think we're going to see more and more of that.
I mean, obviously, I would like to do. There hasn't been a music show yet in the stadium here.
Yeah.
And, when everybody said, well, you're Chuck Morris, you should just tell a band they ought to play the stadium. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
If a band's doing a stadium tour, they're obviously going to want to play Mile High or Folsom because it's a bigger market. And you can't play 2 stadiums. So we have to find the right act. But I'm on a mission to put a band at the stadium here. It's just been a little slow on that.
History, you were the last music producer, I think, to put big acts into our old Hughes Stadium.
Me and Barry Fay, I was the number 1 guy at Fayline, and we did actually the Rolling Stones in '72, and then we did Bob Dylan's Rolling Thunder Review. And I was Fay's number 1 guy and partner, and the Rolling Thunder Review at Hughes Stadium was the most. If anybody old timers are listening to this, that was Bob Dylan did a tour with a bunch of other semi-famous people, T-Bone Burnett, and had a whole bunch of different acts, Roger McGuinn from the Byrds. And we did it at Hughes Stadium. And I think it was the worst weather in the history of my career. It rained for 36 hours day before through the show. I mean, poured.
Must have been just mud everywhere.
There was literally, by the middle of the show, a lake behind the stage, and it rained so hard for 24 hours. And God bless Bob Dylan, he stopped it 1,800 times, and he did the show. So we did the Rolling Thunder Review in Fort Collins, and he had taped like 12 of the shows because he was playing stadiums around the country. And only Bob Dylan picked the show at Hughes, which was stopped. We almost lost it 18 times, and it was in some ways a disaster, and he made that the NBC special on the DVD. And I was trying to think, why would Bob do that? And my guess is he probably said to himself, those fans stayed the whole day. And if they did that, that's so cool. Let other people see that show instead of, and it was called A Hard Rain.
Hard rain's going to fall.
Because it was a hard rain, to say the least. But it was I think physically the toughest problems I have had in all the years I've done shows.
What was the Rolling Stones show out there like?
I had just joined Faye, so I only came up for a little while. It was the Rolling Stones. They do it. They're amazing. And in fact, AEG right now is doing Stones around the world.
Well, maybe we can get the Stones or Bob Dylan back to...
yeah. Hey.
My own personal plug.
Yeah.
Get him back to CSU.
I know. Well, you got some great clubs up here. You got some stuff.
We do. Who would you love to have as a guest in the class that you haven't had yet? When you think ahead, who would you love to be able to come in and guest lecture to our students?
Well, I've had a lot of well-known artists and executives. Jay Marciano, CEO of AG Worldwide, who, by the way, was my first guest because he went to CSU, graduated from CSU years ago. Jay started his promoting company here, went to CSU and Colorado Springs, and couldn't compete with me and Barry Fay. Couldn't make a living, so he moved to LA and became a star. And now he's the CEO of AG Worldwide. And I always tell students, your competition today, and I mean, competition is better, could be your partner or your boss tomorrow. So I always was really nice to most people, even people I competed with. And sure enough, Jay now runs AG Worldwide. We were great friends, and I was a mensch when he couldn't compete with me and Barry Fay, and I don't think he ever forgot that. And now he's running the whole company, AEG, worldwide.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he was my first guest, and big head Todd Parkmore, who I managed for almost 20 years and still do their shows at Red Rock, he and Jay were the first guests because Todd went to school here for a year till he dropped out.
Yeah.
And the band was...
I saw Todd. I went to school here too, and I saw Todd when they were on tour with Dave Matthews Band.
I did that show.
In the 90s at Moby.
We
at
did
Moby
it at
Arena.
Moby.
Yeah.
Todd and Dave did 40 shows together.
Well, when I saw him, Dave opened for Todd.
That's a funny story. They were both exploding, and I was managing Todd and still promoting a lot of shows. And so we ended up doing a whole tour of Dave and Todd. And the third act I managed called The Ugly Americans, which you probably don't remember. But
I remember the name,
I managed them. But anyway, so they were... After about, it was equal money, equal time, but Todd was slightly bigger before the tour started. But then, after about the 8th date, Dave's RCA record came out, and he started selling 100,000 records a week. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget Corin Capshaw, who still manages Dave, still one of my best friends, and called me and said, Chuck, we still want to split the money, and we still want to... have equal sets. It was like 75 minutes each, but we'd like to close the show because a few people are leaving, and I decided that was the right thing to do. So after about the 8th day, we flipped it, and Dave finished the whole tour. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was a great tour.
I must have seen it in those very first early shows.
Yes, yeah, Moby Gym.
Yeah.
Was it Moby Gym? Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have the ad on my phone.
Do you?
Of that show. I'll show you after we're done.
I'd love to see that.
Oh yeah, it's on my phone.
I've seen Dave and Todd separately a bunch of times.
It's in my office. I think my AEG office. A picture of that of the poster.
That'd be great. There are posters. I think in the Bohemian Suite at the new stadium of your old shows at Hughes Stadium.
Yeah. But that was a great tour. It really blew, especially Dave. Well, it blew both of those artists out, and they both became big. Dave became much bigger.
Yeah, I'm big fans of them both. Those are,
and I love Dave. Dave, I still get involved with him. He hasn't changed a bit.
He'd be super as a guest.
Yeah,
he
would. Yeah, I think. Yeah, we definitely want to do that. And he's just, if anybody knows him at all, he's the most unpretentious rock star maybe I've ever known. Mm. I'll tell you my favorite story, which David told me about, and I think it was written up. He was playing in Pennsylvania, and he has a bicycle on his bus, and decided he wanted to take a bicycle ride by himself, and he didn't take his credit card or anything. And after and he was going to get back for sound check, and he got a flat tire
on his bike.
Now, this is a great story. And Dave was wearing his hat backwards and dark glasses. People wouldn't think about he was Dave Matthews. And he hitchhiked back to the arena. And a guy and a girlfriend were going to the show. And Dave said, I need a ride to where there's a show tonight. And they said, well, we're going. And after about 15 minutes, the guy said, you look like Dave Matthews. He was in his bicycle with a blown tire was in the back. He said, yeah.
Yeah, people tell me that all the time.
Yeah, and he, by the way, invited them to sit on the side of the stage for the whole show.
Oh, wow.
And introduce them to the audience.
Oh, my God.
He is like that. He's just wonderful, funny. Hasn't changed a bit since
he's one of a kind. His live shows, I think it's still the best.
He's the great
live experience.
Yeah, and I love the guy. But as far as one of my best friends in the world is a guy named Irving Azoff. He really is. He manages the Eagles, still does. Yeah. Biggest manager in the history of the business. And I've had his company, Azoff Music. He also owns Beast Partners with Tim on one of my oldest friends since they did the second Eagles date when they were rehearsing to do their first album. And I called Irving about speaking, and I had everybody from his company and some of his bands. I said, Irving, how about, speaking? And he said, Chuck, I'm just a little bit uncomfortable. And if I do yours, I've never done any. I'll have to say no to like 10 more. And I said, well, I can't blame. I mean, God bless Irving's been so great as a friend.
Yeah.
And all of his acts, starting with the Eagles and Dan Fogelberg. Yeah. I love to death. Irving grew up with Dan Fogelberg in Illinois.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Best friends. Tragic when Dan died. I did a tribute show to Dan at Fiddler's about
Did you?
3 years ago with all the acts that loved him. It was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are you listening to music wise personally, Chuck, these days?
You
Just
know,
like
I'm
when you're alone, you're in your car, you're at home. Like what do you put on?
old acts, the Eagles, Crosby, Stills and Nash Young, Neil Young. I'm still showing my age. There have been a couple of quote unquote younger bands that I love that have come up. Younger bands, they've been around 5, 10, 15 years. To me, that's a younger band. Avid Brothers, I love those guys.
Yeah.
Love really those guys, and the nicest guys, and they really, I would not miss their shows and would play them in my car, or a band called Old Crow Medicine Show, who I love to death, sort of a hippie bluegrass band.
Yeah.
That kind of music, and I'll listen to Dan Fogelberg and the Eagles and stuff like that.
Well, it's just one thing among so many about working on a college campus is being around this age of students, right? And just the energy that they bring and the new acts and what they put on the radio and the bands that come in, the small ones, the big ones. It's just always learning new music, you know?
Well, part of my success has been I hire people that know stuff that I don't know. I always hire people that might know the new music more than I do because I'm not going to be an expert on some of the new stuff that's coming up. And I've always hired younger people, not necessarily younger in age, but people that knew stuff I didn't know. A friend of mine, I won't mention his name, his favorite line is, people ask him why he's successful. And he's a guy that lives in Denver and is from Russell, Kansas. And he always says, I always hire people smarter than me. And I don't know a lot of people smarter than who I'm talking about. But I understand what he's saying. I try to do the same thing.
That's good advice for our students too. And as we start to wrap up on our time for this episode, I always try to end the episodes talking about our students. That's what we're here for at CSU is our student success, and now you're part of that student success of bringing students through. And what you just said about surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you is really great advice for them. I guess I would end with what additional advice do you have for today's CSU students, whether they're in the business school, the music program, or not, just anything. As they're starting their careers here at CSU?
What I did and what I always advise younger people, and I have 5 kids, and I've always told them from day one, not day one, but is follow your heart. Don't follow the bucks. Follow what you want to do. I don't care if it's you want to be a garbage cleaner or whatever, But don't say, okay, this industry, I can make a lot more money than that industry. My success and other people that I know have followed their heart, what they love, what they can't get enough of. And that's what I did in the music, still do in the music industry. And, don't chase money, don't chase prestige. Just follow your heart, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
I have a daughter who went to CU Music School, great singer. And she decided she wanted to be a rabbi, and now she's the rabbi in Steamboat Springs.
Amazing.
Colton Morris, and she followed her heart. And I've never been a good Jew, if I can say it, but she got religious, and God bless her, she followed it, and now she's loving it, being the rabbi, the one synagogue in Steamboat. She followed her heart, and she's loving it for it.
That's amazing. Well, that's good advice for our students, and Chuck, we're just so fortunate to have you at Colorado State University.
Be honest. It's made me younger and it's kept me happy and alive and digging. And I love just sitting around my office and having students come in and just talk.
Yeah. Well, I love coming over to just talk to. And when I can, I come over to see your amazing guests that you have in the program.
I'm going to embarrass you, but
it's going to grow
CSU
and grow.
is lucky to have you here.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a great place. Yeah.
It's true.
Well, go Rams. And thanks for being here today, Chuck.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the last 4 years because you had a lot to do with it, and I'm having the time of my life.
I love it. Well, a lot more to go. This program's just going to continue to take off thanks to you.
I'm writing an autobiography. Did I tell you that?
Yes.
Yeah, which I'm in the middle of. I'm doing it with a guy named Brett Saunders, who's the morning guy in KBCO.
Brett, sure.
We're writing it together.
Yeah.
And it's called, tentative title, but I grew up in Brooklyn and came out to Boulder to go to school. It's called From Brooklyn to Boulder, the Saga of a Rock Promoter.
By way of CSU. Can I add that byline on the book title?
I'll stick a little
Ram logo on the bottom of
writing my book
Well, when you're ready to publish the book, we'll have you and Brett
Another
back
year or
in
two.
here and we'll
Another
talk
year or
about
two.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That'll be a next episode.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you for listening. I'm Amy Parsons, president of Colorado State University, and you're listening to CSU's The Next 150, where we explore what comes next for CSU by chatting with change makers who are already leading the charge and shaping our next 150 years. I'm gathering their very best advice for today's CSU students. Stay tuned to wherever you get podcasts for our next outstanding conversation. Go Rams!